Fellas, nobody cares about the Ultimate Fighter anymore, and I think the UFC should do something about it. Now, obviously, we've just had the season launch of DC versus Chael for the Ultimate Fighter, but I feel like the Ultimate Fighter is massively outdated. Like, the last good season we had was the one between Cody Garbrandt and TJ Dillashaw. Like, the last 3 to 4 years of every season of the Ultimate Fighter has just been massively dead, and that's regardless of the coaches. None of them have really lived up to the hype. And on top of that, every winner ends up being meaningless. Like Ryan Lauder, the winner of the Ultimate Fighter Season 32. This guy's 1-1 in the UFC, just been knocked out in the first round. Brad Katona, the winner of Season 31. This guy's 1-3 in the UFC, just been knocked out in the first round. Mohammed Usman, the winner of Season 30. This guy's 2-2 in the UFC on a 2-fight losing streak. So even the winners of the Ultimate Fighter, it's not like they're going on to achieve great things. It's not like they're top contenders. They just end up becoming journeymen, and a lot of the Ultimate Fighter winners have ended up getting cut from the UFC. It's a meaningless tournament. Even the winners of the tournament, the best guys on each season, always end up being journeymen in the UFC, and that's if they're able to keep their spot in the UFC. They're all mid-fighters. It's not like the Contender Series. It's just all mid-fighters, low-level regional fighters, and if not, it's going to be journeymen outside of the UFC. And I feel like the Contender Series has massively just kind of outgrown the Ultimate Fighter. Like, at least on the Contender Series, that's where all the main prospects go. If there's any fighter with potential to be something big in the UFC, you send them to the Contender Series. That's where they go. Nobody sends them to the Ultimate Fighter. The Contender Series is just straight business. Like on the Contender Series, it's legitimate prospects. If there is a fighter that has potential to go far in the UFC, they will be on the Contender Series. That is where the main prospects coming into the UFC will be. On top of that, it is just straight fighting, no bullshit. It's not about the fighter's history, the fighter's previous, MMA career. It's just going in there, having a scrap, and then potentially earning a UFC contract. And it is a good gateway to the UFC. There's a regional prospect, send them to the Contender Series. If they get a good win, suddenly they're in the UFC. None of that bullshit if I'm to stay in a house for a couple of weeks with random crackheads. And the Ultimate Fighter, it's just sob stories nowadays. It's just this random fighter that nobody's ever heard of before. Some regional fighter telling us his sob story and how much he wants to be in the UFC and how much it means to his family. And again, I'm sure they're nice people and everything, but nobody really cares about this in 2025. And they're terrible regional fighters as well. Like we said before, even the winners of the Ultimate Fighter never really going to achieve great things in the UFC nowadays. It's low-level regional fights being displayed on a big pedestal of the UFC. All of the fighters are terrible. All the good fighters are going to the Contender Series. And I just feel like overall, reality TV is dead. Like at least back in 2010 and before that, at least the Ultimate Fighter actually had something going to them. You'd see proper rivalries. You'd see, scenes and chaos outside of the octagon. And it would make for good TV. That's what kind of the Ultimate Fighter gained popularity on. It was about what happened outside the octagon more than in the octagon. But I feel like ever since like 2010, just reality TV in general has died. And that's kind of one of the main reasons why the Ultimate Fighter has died too. Like in 2025, there's nothing. There's no substance to the Ultimate Fighter. It's just random regional fighters who want to get in the UFC, stay in a house, and they've tried and force a reality TV show out of it. It doesn't mean anything. Like back then, we used to have drunken fights, parties, chaos. It used to be an absolute shit show on the Ultimate Fighter. It used to be all chaos, and you never really see it anywhere before. And it was fun. It was fun to watch. Nowadays, it's all just about being polished and focusing on a clean brand awareness so that the UFC doesn't get a bad reputation rather than being what it used to be. And it's just fighters talking about family, their country, how much they want to be in the UFC. It's lost all of its personality. Even the McGregor versus Chandler season of the Ultimate Fighter, you have Conor McGregor. He's probably one of the biggest coaches you could possibly get for the Ultimate Fighter. What we expected was it was going to be like McGregor versus Faber Part 2. It was going to be one of the best Ultimate Fighter series yet. We've finally got some good coaches. We've got one of the best trash talkers in the UFC against the guy that was supposed to be taking on Michael Chandler. What it ended up being was 90%, like I said before, just regional fighters waffling on about, their past career and what they want to achieve in the UFC in their country and whatever else. And we only got about 10% of McGregor. The only good moment from McGregor in that entire series was the time he pushed Michael Chandler. That was literally it. Rivalries have also gone downhill in the Ultimate Fighter. Like we used to see Vanderlei Silva versus Chael Sonnen, one of the best moments in Ultimate Fighter history. Guys like Mayhem Miller versus Michael Bisping, Rampage Jackson versus Rashad Evans, TJ Dillashaw versus Cody Garbrandt. Real rivalries that actually sold, and if they were to actually fight, it'd be a fight that could do well on pay-per-views because of the Ultimate Fighter. Nowadays, you've got DC and Chael. These guys literally have a podcast together. There's going to be no rivalries between the two of them. Before that, Alexa Grasso and Valentina Shevchenko, a woman with broken English versus a woman with broken English. Damn, you're going to get some crazy scenes there. Juliana Pena and Amanda Nunes. You've got Amanda Nunes who speaks Portuguese and can barely speak English, and Juliana Pena who needs to put the mic down every time she picks it up. Whitaker versus Gastelum, two nice guys going at it. There's no rivalries these days. It's lost all of its substance. I mean, look at that season of McGregor versus Chandler, for example. Let's use that as an example. It was meant to be veterans versus prospects. That's what it was titled at. The veterans were just old fighters who were towards the end of their career begging to get in the UFC, and if they or they might have had UFC runs before that had fallen short. And the prospects weren't even real prospects, it was just mid-level journeymen on the regional scene who happened to be slightly younger, so they labeled them as prospects. Like, the fighters on the Ultimate Fighter nowadays, there's nothing to them. People are saying it's a shitty format, the reality TV show feel doesn't have the same appeal as before. Yeah, that's because reality TV has died, and that's why the Ultimate Fighter has ultimately died as well. It's way too much of a highly polished product now. In those golden days of cameras everywhere that could catch you and throw it into a great show, again, I agree. It's too polished now. It's too focused on brand reputation. So this is what I think the UFC should do instead. Now, I will warn you, this is a bit of a, I guess, a random idea, but I've been thinking about this. I think the UFC could do, now, you'll have to hear me out, a yearly unranked tournament. Now, what I mean by this is 16 unranked fighters in a certain weight class will face off in a tournament. This tournament will take place early on in the year, lasting until the end of the year. It'll be quite a long tournament, and the final will be a fight night main event, and the winner will be given a title eliminator with somebody in the top 5. So let me use an example. Let's use the lightweight division. You'd have a 16-man tournament full of unranked lightweights, fighters who have potential in the lightweight division, not necessarily borderline ranked, but they're unranked lightweights who have genuine talent. Now, you might notice all, like I said before, all solid fighters slash prospects at 155. There's not journeyman bums in there. It's all solid fighters, not bums, and it doesn't include fighters who are borderline top 15, because I feel like if you're borderline top 15, getting chucked into a tournament with other fighters, and you've got to go through to get a chance in the top 5, I think would be unfair. Let's say Ludovic Klein in this tournament, for example, wins. Ludovic Klein to get past the first round, the second round, and in the third round, he'd have a pay-per-view slot against his opponent, which in this case is Manuel Torres, and then the final he'll face Mitabeka Obai, for example. That would be a fight night main event, Ludovic Klein versus Mitabeka Obai, where the winner gets a title eliminator. Ludovic Klein, let's say he wins that. Now, because Ludovic Klein wins, he now gets a title eliminator in the lightweight division against somebody, for example, let's say right now Paddy Pimblett or Justin Gaethje or Arman Tsarukyan. So let's say they did Justin Gaethje versus Ludovic Klein after Ludovic Klein has won the unranked tournament for a title eliminator. And then the loser in the final, for example, Mitabeka Obai, he can get somebody in the top 10 to top 15 just to make it a bit fair. Again, if we use the example of the middleweight division, this could be a bunch of unranked middleweights that could be included in a tournament. Let's say Ikram Aliskerov was to win. He'd get past the first round, he'd get past the second round, he'd make it to the final. Let's say it was Ikram Aliskerov versus Azamat Bekaev in the tournament finale. That would be a fight night main event. If Ikram Aliskerov wins, he gets a #1 contender fight against Sean Strickland or Caio Bravo, and Azamat Bekaev can get somebody else in the top 10 or top 15. Now, there are some rules to this. Don't include fighters who are about to be ranked. For example, at lightweight, don't include the likes of Mauricio Houfi, Fares Diam, and Yoel Alvarez, because I feel like those guys are about to be ranked. So if you chuck them in a tournament full of other unranked fighters who might not be at the same stage as them, it would be a little bit unfair. And I think the UFC should do end of tournament drafts, because if we're taking some of the 16 best unranked fighters, that might be a bit of a drought after the tournament's done, because a lot of those guys have lost. So I think the UFC may need some new talent, which is why I think an end of UFC tournament draft could be a thing. For example, bringing over fighters like Paul Hughes or other good high-level fighters from other organizations to that division. Or in the bantamweight division, for example, somebody like they've just recently done now with Patchy Mix, or other high-level fighters from different organizations that could potentially be top 15 worthy. Or for the featherweight division, like Patricio Pitbull or Aaron Pico, who they've just brought over, or again, just high-level fighters from different organizations. Now, the benefits of this tournament is, first of all, it helps break the old guard in any division. There is a bit of an old guard right now in a lot of divisions where it's just the same guys kind of camping the top 5 or just the top 10. A lot of gatekeepers in a lot of weight classes. So I feel like giving these guys an immediate chance to get in the top 5 and get a #1 contender fight by beating unranked fighters, it would kind of switch things up, and it's not just the same guys at the top in all these fights all the time. It also brings a lot more attention towards unranked fighters. It's no surprise that most casual fans in every weight class probably can't name more than 5 unranked fighters. So I feel like this tournament, if it had enough hype around it, if the implications were big enough, if there was, if it was meaningful, I feel like it would bring a lot more hype. Rather than selling these regional fighters who are mostly journeymen, let's get actual talent on here. Let's get guys who actually mean something to the UFC. And this would bring a lot more attention to these unranked fighters in the division in general. And like I kind of just said, it's actual UFC-worthy fighters. You're not just seeing this low-level slop like the Ultimate Fight between journeymen who are going out there and having a scrap. It's actually going to be high-level fights between unranked guys in whatever weight class it may be, UFC-worthy guys, and guys who could potentially, like I said, the winner of the tournament could get a title eliminator too, so it means something to the UFC. Now, there are some negatives of this kind of tournament format, like, for example, it will take a long time. If you're doing a 16-man tournament, That's 4 fights within a short time frame. There could be a shit ton of injuries. Like, for example, if you saw the fight with Diego Ferreira and Mateza and Betske, that was a brutal fight. If that was to happen in a tournament, for example, the chances are the guy's going to be injured. He's not going to be able to fight. So injuries could mess things up. Pullouts as well could mess things up. Imagine like the finale, for example. Somebody pulls out. That's going to mess things up. You're going to have to either postpone the fight, which is only going to make the tournament last longer, or you're going to have to bring in a replacement, which is going to be kind of confusing. And it could also cause controversy over a title eliminator too. So, for example, let's say, if we use the example of before, Ludovic Klein, he wins the tournament. He's beaten Mitavecaro by Manuel Torres, Jared Gordon, and Diego Ferreira. He's beaten all these guys in this unranked 155 tournament. Is that really enough to give him a title eliminator when he's beaten 0 top contenders? So it could be a little bit unfair in some aspects of it. Or, if that's not a good idea, instead of the Ultimate Fighter, let's do Joe versus pros. 200-pound bodybuilders, 200-plus pound bodybuilders, that is, versus pro bantamweights. The Bradley Martins versus Demetrius Johnson. Get Bradley Martin over to the UFC. Don't steroid test him. Don't drug test him. Put him against Demetrius Johnson. Put him against some bantamweight dude who could potentially beat Bradley Martin. I feel like a lot of people want to see Bradley Martin get his ass kicked. Or like a Sam Sulek versus Brad Katoni. You get the point. These bodybuilders against these, rather than seeing like an Ultimate Fighter fight that nobody cares about, stick him in there with bigger guys. Or like an Eddie Hall versus Marab. Obviously, it's not going to be actually Marab or Eddie Hall. But like a strongman like Eddie Hall coming over to the UFC to face a lower level pro. I feel like it could be fun. You've got the whole argument of, does size matter in the octagon against a smaller guy with a much higher skill set? You know, I think it could be quite fun because, let's be honest, most people would rather see Eddie Hall in that 2v1 fight over the Ultimate Fighter. Most people would rather see these Russian promotions where you've got one obese guy against a smaller opponent rather than the Ultimate Fighter, because the Ultimate Fighter is dead. Benefits of Joe versus pros, it's unique as fuck. You're not getting this anywhere else. Well, you actually do get this in other places, like with Eddie Hall's fights, but I think it could be a lot more unique than what we're currently getting in the Ultimate Fighter, which is kind of plain and boring. This would draw more numbers than Power Slap. Don't get me wrong, Power Slap's amazing for YouTube Shorts, but if we're actually talking and bringing actual numbers, potentially selling pay-per-views, I think a Joe versus Pro could actually be, maybe not pay-per-views, but a Joe versus Pro would bring a lot more numbers than just Power Slap. Now, there are some negatives to Joe versus Pros. Very hard to commission. I mean, you've got a 260-pound bodybuilder against a guy who could potentially be 135 pounds. You've got a guy with no experience versus a professional. It's going to be very hard to commission, especially in a company as professional as the UFC, and a very limited talent pool as well. I'm not sure how many 260-pound guys who have a high profile there is out there who are also going to be willing to face guys who are a lot smaller, who are also going to be willing to face the bigger guys, if you know what I mean. So it's got a limited talent pool. I'm not sure how sustainable this is, but that's just my thoughts on the Ultimate Fighter. I know the whole unranked tournament might have been a bit random, but I really do feel like that'll be better than the Ultimate Fighter because it's dead nowadays. It doesn't work. Do one last season with 2 good coaches who are actually going to have a bit of a rivalry. Make it have a good send-off because it's got history, but let's do this unranked tournament. Let's get these big names going. Let's actually bring some excitement to the divisions. And let's get rid of the Ultimate Fighter once and for all because he's dead. Let me know if you agree. Thank you for watching.